fun to have so much fun? Let's check. Are you on?
Am I on?
Yep, you're on. All right, so we're going to talk about the story in 1 Kings. We're going to talk about Bathsheba. Now, most of you know the story of David discovering Bathsheba bathing, how he brought her to his house through a kingly directive, and then subsequently killed her husband in the war because of his child that she was carrying. Not a happy story. We don't hear often the next story, though, of Bathsheba, the one where she had to hold the king to task in regard to her and Solomon, and this is that story in 1 Kings 1:1-31. King David was old and advanced in years, and they covered him up with lots and lots of clothes and blankets, but he just couldn't keep warm, so they got him a pretty girl to be next to him. And it says that that's all they did, was she just served him. And it says that, that his son, Adonijah, said, I'm going to be king. And in truth, Adonijah kind of had a right to believe that he would be king, because he was the next in line. But the kingship was not promised to Adonijah. It was promised to Solomon. So Adonijah went off on his own and sacrificed and made a big to-do. And then Nathan came in, Nathan the prophet came into King David and said, David, didn't my lord the king say that Solomon would be king after you? And then Nathan went to Bathsheba and said, you have to speak to the king. Let me tell you what to say. And then she did.
So Bathsheba went to the king in his room. The king was very old. Abishag, the Shamanite, was attending the king. Bathsheba bowed and did obedience to the king, and the king said, what do you wish? She said to him, my lord, you swore to your servant by the Lord your God, saying, your son Solomon shall succeed me as king, and he shall sit on my throne. But now, suddenly, Adonijah has become king. Although you, my lord, the king, do not know it, he has sacrificed oxen, fatted cattle, and sheep in abundance, and has invited all the children of the king, the priest Abiathar, and Joab, the commander of the army. But your servant Solomon he has not invited. But you, my lord, the king, the eyes of all Israel are on you to tell them who shall sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. Otherwise it will come to pass, when my lord the king sleeps with his ancestors, that my son Solomon and I will be counted offenders.
Now, while Bathsheba was still speaking, Nathan the prophet came into their presence, came into the room. And the king was told, Nathan the prophet is here to come see you. And so he admitted Nathan. Basically, Nathan said the same thing. Told him how people were exclaiming, long live King Adonijah. And also explained, but of course, Adonijah didn't invite me, didn't invite Solomon, didn't invite this guy, didn't invite this guy. Has this thing been brought about by you, David, he asks. But you haven't let us know? And then the king answered.
King David answered, summon Bathsheba to me. So she came into the king's presence and stood before the king. The king swore, saying, as the Lord lives, who has saved my life from every adversity, as I swore to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, your son Solomon shall succeed me as king, and he shall sit on my throne in my place. So will I do this day. Then Bathsheba bowed with her face to the ground and did obedience to the king and said, may my lord King David live forever.
Thank you. Bathsheba, the last woman named in Matthew as a part of the ancestry of Jesus. In the midst of all those men, 4 women named. Bathsheba was the last. Solomon's mom. A strong woman. She'd been wronged in many ways by King David. but she always landed on her feet. And now is the time for David to make good on his promise to her that Solomon would be named king after he dies, but behind David's back, an older son claims the throne. So for Bathsheba, it's now or never. She addresses the king, and he heeds to her. Another woman in the lineage of Jesus who stands up for what is right and good and true. Another woman in the lineage of Jesus who takes a risk to do something that could get her into a lot of trouble. Because you don't just go into the king, even if you're married to the king. Another woman who helped Jesus be who Jesus was. But at this point, I have to trouble the water a little bit. Matthew 1 through 16. It says, Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called Messiah. That's how the Matthew lineage ends. Jacob, so it goes, so-and-so the father of so-and-so the father of so-and-so the father of Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called Messiah. Luke 3:23 begins the ancestral line saying Jesus was about 30 years old, which is where we get that Jesus was about 30 years old when he started his ministry, because it says so in Luke. Jesus was about 30 years old when he began his work. He was the son, as was thought, of Joseph, son of Heli, son of Matthew. And then it goes on, blah, son of this, son of that, son. And the list has no women mentioned here in Luke. It also doesn't include a few key men. Still, though, it mentions David and others, and it goes into verse 38, Enos, son of Seth, son of Adam, son of God. So where Matthew wants to make sure you understand Jesus is a part of the line of Abraham, Luke says it goes farther back than that. It goes all the way back to Adam, all the way back to Son of God. So Jesus is definitely the rightful king. That's what this whole point is. Jesus is the rightful king. He belongs in the line of kings. Very important for these two writers who are addressing the people of Israel, the Jewish people. Both Matthew and Luke address the ancestry of Joseph, the man who raised Jesus, the man who called him son. When we understand Jesus to be fathered by God directly through the influence of the Holy Spirit, we then need to look at Jesus' human father, Joseph. The beautiful thing about this story to me, in this part of it, is that Jesus was adopted. How cool is that? Jesus was adopted. They didn't have formal adoption with lots of paperwork. Many assumed Joseph was Jesus' biological father, but Joseph and Mary knew that he wasn't. And yet, through his line came legitimacy to the throne. Joseph gave Jesus his birthright as a gift. Powerful. To give something that valuable. Something that generally only goes blood to blood to blood. As a gift. And then to say, you are my blood. I take you as my blood. I give you what is most valuable to me. My ancestry. All the women we have been talking about helped to make Joseph who he was. Joseph, the man who, when he found out his betrothed was pregnant, he said, I'm not sure what to do. I think I'll just quietly separate. I'm not going to report her. I'm not going to, because he could have at that time. I'm not going to cause her any harm. I'm not sure why this happened, but, I'm I'm just going to dismiss this quietly. And then an angel came to him in a dream, and he followed what the angel wanted him to do, which was to stay with Mary and to be Jesus' father, his daddy. So all these women have been influencing Joseph, and then Joseph passed it on to Jesus through his embrace of love by making him his son of choice. In God's eyes, this didn't skip a beat. Jesus was Joseph's son. That makes me very excited. Today we get tangled in webs of legalities, paperwork, and who knows what else. But when you take someone in as your own, God looks past the paperwork and the legalities. God looks at the heart and listens to the sound of your voice. God sees family. In a few days, we will celebrate the birth of Jesus. Jesus, God's Son, clearly God's Son. Jesus, Mary's son. Jesus, Joseph's son. That's your family. Penguins notwithstanding, Mary and Joseph. Joseph just as excited as Mary that their beloved son is born. As we rejoice with this family, let us rejoice with all families of all kinds in the resplendence of their varied shapes and forms.